Hello, and welcome to Chapter 3 in Healthcare Supervision. We're talking about leadership concepts in HIM. We're going to start at the bottom of page 47, and we're talking about how effective HIM professionals keep up to date or abreast of emerging concepts in the management practice. Now, as an HIM professional, it's not enough for us to know about the coding changes or changes with HIPAA or other privacy laws, but we have to be aware of other concepts that are going on in the business world, and we have to know how they relate to healthcare in general, and then we have to know specifically how they relate to HIM. So in this chapter, we're going to talk about diversity in the workplace, the use of teams in healthcare, and the importance of motivation and morale in the workplace. So if we start on page 48, we're jumping right into diversity. And we're talking about specifically workplace diversity. So workplace diversity is the set of individual, group, and cultural differences that employees bring to an organization. Now, our individual differences are things like race, age, gender, and the book goes on to say that physical ability and sexual orientation are also individual differences. Now, these are the differences that make us unique as individuals, but also place us in groups. So a group could possibly be 50 years and older, or a group could be women. So those are based on those individual differences. Now, cultural diversity comes from our individual and our group differences. Now, this can be our beliefs, our religion, our language, or our behaviors. So this is how we're breaking down workplace diversity: individual, group, and cultural. Now, when we move to our next slide, we get into cultural diversity in the workplace. So let's read that paragraph there. A culturally diverse workplace offers many benefits to a healthcare organization. Now, think about this while I'm reading through this and while you're reading this. Patient satisfaction is impacted when patients see their community represented in the workforce. So if I'm a patient going into the hospital and I'm in a different country, let's say I'm on vacation, and I go into this hospital and there are very few people that speak English. And let's say I'm in China and everyone is Asian and everyone is speaking a Chinese language. How comfortable am I going to feel in that situation? Well, patient satisfaction is impacted when patients see their community represented in the workforce. So therefore, you need a diverse workforce. You need white people, you need black people, you need Spanish people, you need Asian people, because our patient populations are diverse in their culture. And so when we all represent the different cultures in the workforce, our patients are more comfortable because, again, they see themselves represented in the workforce. Now, the second thing that increases patient satisfaction is translators, because, again, we have a huge Spanish-speaking population here in the state of Mississippi. And so a lot of times when our Spanish-speaking patients come in, they may be able to speak back and forth with someone when we're talking about general language. But when we get into medical terminology, that's just something, that's a whole different animal. And so you have to have someone trained that can pass a competency test so that we know their clinical terminology is sufficient and they can speak to these patients so that they understand what's going on in healthcare. Now, a multicultural organization is attractive to a diverse talent pool of individuals. Employees with different backgrounds and beliefs provide added value to organizational decision making and, as such, impact overall performance and idea generation. Diverse employees bring their own perspective to an organization, and they offer different viewpoints, different experiences, and different insights into management discussions. Now, let's talk about some of the barriers to diversity in healthcare. Now, some of these barriers are psychological. That means they're in our mind. So, despite the benefits, minorities are underrepresented in healthcare organization boardrooms and executive offices. Barriers to improving workplace diversity are both psychological and organizational. Now, our psychological barriers include similarity attraction, social identity, stereotyping, and cognitive basis. Now, you don't see cognitive basis on our barriers to diversity here. You just see those first three I listed. So let's kind of break these down. Now, similarity attraction in a nutshell means that you prefer to interact with people that are similar to you. Maybe they're the same race as you, maybe they're around the same age as you, maybe they're the same gender as you, but you're more comfortable interacting with them. That's why lots of females choose a female gynecologist, because they're more comfortable interacting with someone similar to themselves. Now, social identity. Social identity is who you are as a person, or your sense of belonging to a group. So I can be grouped into more than one thing. So what's the big one now? Well, what generation you're from. Are you a baby boomer? Are you a millennial? Well, those are a part of your social identity, as well as being male or female or being in a certain age group. So if I'm over 50 or if I'm from 25 to 49, those are a part of your social identity. Now it says people identify with more than one social group. So examples of social groups are gender, so women, occupation, so I may be, in a group of lawyers and we have our own little monthly meetings where we go get together and do our lawyerly things together. Or again, by age, and they have it broken down into baby boomers. People will strive to improve the status of the social group with which they identify. Membership in a social group maintains an individual's self-image, and as a result, a person belonging to a particular social group is more likely to discriminate against someone in a different social group. This is where we get stereotyping and cultural bias. Okay? So we know that stereotyping is making generalizations about other individuals. The one that just comes to mind immediately of a stereotype is white men can't jump. Okay, so that's a stereotype. We're saying something general about the entire population or our entire social group, and it may or may not be true. So, of course, we know stereotypes are not always true. All right, so going into cognitive bias. This is commonly defined as an error in reasoning, judgment, or decision making. And an example of our cognitive bias is called the bandwagon effect. Now, we all know bandwagon fans. So if a college team is doing well and they're winning all their games and they make it to the national championship and they win, then they got all these new fans. Well, these are called bandwagon fans because they're just jumping into that popular thing that's going on right now, or they're into this fad. So, and it's going to slowly just kind of fade away after a little while. But that's what our bandwagon effect is. They simply do something because everybody else is. All right, so I'm going to drop down to the next slide. So we do have some barriers to diversity in our organizational aspect of things. So we talked about psychological, now we're moving on to organizational. Now our slide talks about how there's a lack of commitment to achieving diversity by an organization. Now that's one of these bullets listed here on page 49 is either your organization is not hiring people so that they're not diverse, or it talks about how top management, there's no commitment there. It talks about recruiting. If you're going out and recruiting, are they targeting diverse populations? And then promotion opportunities not as available to minority group members. So it's all about how our organizations go about getting people to come into their employment. Now, the one thing on here, next to the last one, work-life balance issues not supported. Let's talk about that. Drop down on 49 where you see work-life balance. So, work-life balance issues may be barriers to creating a diverse workforce. Employees at all levels of the organization strive to maintain a balance between their work and a personal life. Because I'll tell you, I don't want to work all the time. I don't want to be, on the clock 12 hours a day, every day of the week, and not have time to do the things that I want to do. And so I know you're the same way. Well, some of the barriers for a work-life balance is a single parent. If they have to do overtime, well, she might not be able to go coach her son's soccer team. Or if you've got a dual income family where a man and a woman both work, then based on work schedule, you may not get to schedule that vacation where everybody can go hang out together and have a good time. So work-life balance is sometimes an organizational barrier to diversity. But a lot of different organizations address work-life balance by offering some different benefits. So you could have flex scheduling, where you can adjust when you get to work and when you leave work. So let's say I need to be somewhere at 4 o'clock on the dot, but I normally work 8 to 4:30. Well, I might come in and work 7 to 3:30 that day. So there's a lot of different things that they'll do to work with you to help out with that. And then that last paragraph in that section, the extent to which an organization tolerates harassment and exclusion is another barrier to diversity. So the first and foremost, employee harassment is outlawed by the Civil Rights Act. So we're going to talk about that in Chapter 6, but the Civil Rights Act of 1964 specifically prohibits discrimination in hiring, compensation, and training on the basis of religion, race, gender, national origin, disability, or sexual orientation. And so again, that's another barrier to diversity is harassment and exclusion. All right, let's get into diversity management, the bottom of 49. Now, as the diversity in the healthcare workforce continues to increase, there are many ways for an organization to create and improve their diverse environment. A hospital with a diversity improvement plan, they may have a non-discrimination policy that includes ethnic, racial, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and transsexual communities. They may educate all clinical staff during orientation because, again, you have so many different patients that have different cultural and linguistic factors. So you've got to be able to deal with people of all different cultures. Second, collaborate with other healthcare organizations to improve professional and allied healthcare workforce training and educational programs in the communities served. Require all your employees to attend diversity training. And then, I won't keep reading these, but the last one, hire managers that have a diversity goal, or hiring managers have a diversity goal in their performance expectations. So hiring managers can't just hire all black people if they're black, or hire all white people if they're white. They have to have a goal that I'm going to hire 50% white, 50% black, or 45% white, 45% black, 10% other. So that's how you get, or how you manage to have diversity in your hospital. Now, this talks about employee affinity groups in our little third bullet point here. It says employee affinity groups are a way for social groups to come together in the workplace. Affinity groups are formed by employees with common interest. They come together for a specific purpose, such as mentoring, continuing education, or participation in a service project. Now, workplace harassment in that next paragraph. Again, it has to be taken seriously at all levels of the organization. Your CEO cannot harass your CFO. Your line cook cannot harass the helper in the kitchen. The manager in the HIM department cannot harass their employees. Doesn't matter what level of the organization you work in, harassment is not okay. Now, cultural sensitivity practiced at all levels. Now, this should be, again, practiced at all levels of healthcare in the organization. Now, those are listed at the bottom of 50. We'll go through a couple of these. Now, healthcare, acronyms, abbreviations, we use them all the time. Well, when we use an abbreviation or an acronym, we need to make sure that we explain them, because an employee's socioeconomic or job status may limit his or her knowledge of these acronyms. They may not know what we're talking about. Okay? Second, I like this one. Use idioms sparingly. Okay? Now, idioms are something that we use to make an idea or a point more vivid. But not everybody's going to understand idioms. Now, some of the common workplace idioms that I thought of was, well, you just need to take the bull by the horns. Or, oh, you just hit the nail on the head. Or, cross your fingers. Or, that's not going to fly. Those are idioms. They kind of make a point, but again, somebody may be way more literal than you are, and they're like, oh, what nail did they just hit? I don't see a nail anywhere. So again, use idioms sparingly. The next one. Expect employees not to use slang in the workplace. Slang is not the same for everyone. We don't all understand the same slang terms based on who we are in our cultural groups. Another one I wanted to point out. Pay attention to body language. Respect others' personal space and keep an appropriate distance. If you're standing right in front of my face to talk to me, I feel like you are being very aggressive, and I'm going to take a step back. So you want to make sure that you always have respect for people's personal space and their personal boundaries. This says stay 4 to 12 feet away from people at all times, and I agree with that. And then the last one, encourage and invite people to talk in groups. Now, this, some people may not be comfortable with this, but this helps, for you to get a better understanding of who you're working with, and, it helps bring people out of their shell. Now, I'd never force anybody to talk in a group setting, but encourage and inviting people to do so sometimes will just give them the confidence to do it. All right, moving over to 51, we're talking about aging workforce. Now, with the post-World War II baby boom generation aging, workers age 55 and older are expected to make up a larger share of the labor force than in the past. The actual and projected statistics indicate that at the same time the older workforce is growing, the younger workforce is declining, and you can see that in figure 3.1 at the bottom of 51. Workers over the age of 55 are not only more plentiful in number, but they're choosing to work for longer. Now, this generation is healthier than people of the past. They have a longer life expectancy, and so a lot of people continue to work while they're healthy. This group of workers is also better educated than in the past, which increases the likelihood that many will remain in the workforce. And financial reasons. It's not cheap to retire. So they have to have health insurance. And so to have health insurance, they got to keep working. Now, the lack of younger workers to replace retiring workers may also cause older workers to remain in the workplace for a longer period. For those newer, younger employees who do enter and participate in the workforce, there's going to be some competition. Now, let's flip over to 52. Let's see where we're going. Let's start with, let's go back to Let's go back to 51 and keep reading through there. So let's start with the last paragraph there. I like the last paragraph. Implementing flexible work practices such as staggered start times and job sharing improves retention of older employees who might be struggling with issues related to care of elderly parents or young grandchildren. Human resources services encompass health management actions that deal with the physical aspects of aging. Organizations should offer health and wellness education tailored to an aging workforce. Physical and mental health issues should be addressed through routine health checks and wellness training. And the physical environment should be assessed for safety as well as ergonomic features that benefit all employees but have particular appeal to older individuals. And so then we're going to go over to our ergonomic principles. So we have listed here basic ergonomic principles of good sitting posture. Now, I'm not going to read through all of these, but be familiar with these. I would know these. You're not going to have to list them or anything like that, but just be familiar. And a lot of these are common sense. You know, when you sit at a chair or at a desk, your feet should be on the floor, or if you have a footrest, they could be on the footrest. Your hips need to be at a 90-degree angle, so you're not slouching backwards, you're not leaning forward, you're sitting up straight. Your lower back needs to be supported. Your head and neck should be in an upright position. And then so on. So again, be familiar with those. Now, stereotyping accompanies age diversity in the workplace. So again, these are another aging workforce issues, is stereotyping older people. Well, we might think, well, they're not as productive as younger workers, or they're older, they have more health issues, or they're not as flexible or receptive to change as a younger worker. But repeated research shows that the negative stereotypes in regards to productivity, flexibility, and receptiveness to change are not true. Evidence does demonstrate that older workers do not call in sick more often, but do need more time to recover from illness. Let's see, going down into let's go on over to inclusion, but let's look at the creating retirement options real quick. I don't want to skip over that. Very last section where you get down there to bridge employment. This is a way to create those retirement options for people. So if you've ever heard of bridge employment, this is when someone who is currently working full-time, they decide to take a different job and work possibly part-time. So if I left my full-time job and I went and I started working part-time at the cancer registry, that's a bridge employment. It's allowing me to gradually slow down. I'm not going, full-time job to cold turkey. I'm sitting at home every day with nothing to do. So there's that little bridge there that just kind of helps create that retirement option. All right, so now let's move on to inclusion. Now, we talked about diversity. It's our differences, whether it's individual, it's group, things like that. So diversity encompasses all those differences that we exhibit in the workplace. But inclusion means that the differences between individuals are truly respected and valued in the workplace. Inclusion is the result of successful diversity management and enables all employees, regardless of aspects like age, gender, race, and religion, to be as productive as possible. Accepting diversity and valuing the contributions of all employees is necessary for an organization to reach its potential. So diversity is the fact that we're different. We have those differences, and we all come together and we get along and we respect each other, and we see the value in having someone else that's different than ourselves do the same job or work in the same work group or be in the same department. Because again, all of those differences They're not bad, and sometimes they may not be good, but they teach us perspective. All right, so let's get into our teams. So, bottom of 53. The evidence of diversity within an organization is no more apparent than in its teams. So, we all know a team is a group of people working together to achieve a common goal for which they hold themselves accountable. So, in a team, members work toward a common purpose. So, they have a shared work product. The end product could not be completed without people working together, and so the tasks depend on a team effort. They share responsibility for outcome or the input. They respect the necessity of working together to accomplish a common goal, and they engage in team activities that cross departmental boundaries within an organization. Now, let's flip over to 53, and let's talk about the members of the team. I want to get down there. Okay, so team roles are assigned so that the work of the team can get done in a timely and effective manner. Well, our team sponsor, they are the one that initially brings this team together, and they assign the charter. The charter is what defines the expectations for the team. It details the mission and vision. It provides the scope, sets the boundaries, names the leader, members, and identifies the key outcomes. So it says that the sponsor is usually someone in executive management, or like maybe your CEO, or they're a VP, something like that. Well, they're going to want that team to get brought together. They sponsor the team, and then there's a leader of the team. Now, this person's typically handpicked by that sponsor, and they are going to be responsible for the administrative aspects of team management, like setting up and running meetings, assigning the tasks, keeping the team focused, resolving conflicts if they come up between team members, and communicating with the team sponsor. Then you have your team members. Team members are the ones that actually do the work of the team. And we have those broken down here, or have a couple of the different ones broken down here. Now we have a recorder. They will be the ones that would do your agenda and work on your minutes. You have a timekeeper. They're the ones keeping people on task. You know, if you veered off way too far on a tangent, they rein everything back in so that things remain timely. And then you have a facilitator or a coach. And this is somebody, if they're not a leader and they're not necessarily a member, but they understand the team process, and they're there to help assist with the mechanics of the team process. All right, let's see. So it's not in our slides, but if you look at the bullet points there on page 55, we have some suggestions for how to form a successful team. Be familiar with those. You know, you want to ensure that there's representation of all areas of the organization that are going to be affected by the problem. You want to allow for a diversity of perspectives. You want to pay attention to positive personal chemistry among team members. You don't want your team to be too big. You want to maintain a manageable size team. You want to enlist members with a desire or interest to serve the purpose of the team. And then you want to choose a leader who collaborates, not dominates. So you want somebody that's going to work with everyone and not just bring their gavel and bang it on the table every time somebody else speaks and shuts things down and says it's my way or the highway. So you want them to be a collaborator. Now, this is a refresher of PI. But we're talking about our stages of growth within our teams. So we have forming, storming, norming, and performing. So in forming, our team members are established, our tasks are defined, our behaviors and ground rules are outlined. In storming, team members work together to learn to effectively manage differences of opinions and outright conflicts so collaboration can occur and move the project forward. Norming. Team members make progress on their work, overcoming differences and accepting the established ground rules. And finally, performing. Team members perform consistently to get the work done, choosing and implementing changes and working through the group's problems. Now, not only do we have, different kinds of teams, we're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about the 4. So we have formal teams, informal teams, cross-functional teams, and then we have virtual teams. And most of them are just what they sound like. Now, formal, they're structured. We had that sponsor. They chose a leader. They assigned the charter, which includes our mission. What are we supposed to do? Then you have your informal teams. These consist of employees who develop groups around shared interests that may or may not pertain to organizational business. Now, an example of an informal team here. So, usually HIM is a bunch of women, typically. Now, there's a few males here and there, but typically it's women. And an informal team might be a group of women in the HIM department getting together and having a Biggest Loser competition, because women struggle with weight loss sometimes. So that's an informal team. They want to lose weight, so they develop their team around that shared interest. Now, if you cross over to page 56, you get into your cross-functional teams. This is where you have people from different departments being on teams. Now, if you've got issues with duplicate medical record numbers or things that are causing issues on the billing end that get started off in admissions, then you might have admissions and you might have HIM and you might have people from the business office all be involved in that cross-functional team, because everyone is affected. Then you have virtual teams. So again, virtual teams, just what they sound like. Your members are geographically distributed. They're not in the same town. They may not be in the same state. So you still need somebody to work together. So it may not be face-to-face. It may be through a different method. They may have Zoom meetings, or they may use Skype, or what other technology is out there. Now, let's move on to motivation. So we're moving over to 57. Now, motivation is the forces acting on or within a person that cause the person to behave in a specific goal-directed manner. Understanding employee behavior helps the manager to influence and improve performance using motivation techniques. Now, work motivation theories that we have here, and they skipped a couple of slides the way they did this. They just talk about the different theories that we have here with Maslow and then Hertzberg. But let's talk about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, because we all have this. Now, intrinsic means internal, okay? So this is coming from within myself as an individual person. Motivating factors that come from inside might just be my own desire to succeed, or that feeling of accomplishment when I meet my goals, okay? So that's me. Nobody controls that. Nobody has effect on that but me. So that's internal to myself. Now we have extrinsic or external motivating factors. Now these are tangible things that we can put our fingers on, and they're very obvious to other people. So if I'm getting some extrinsic motivation, then there may be a promotion I'm trying to get, or maybe I'm wanting a salary increase. So those things are affected by other people. They can tell when I got a promotion, and that may be what's motivating me, is I want more money, so I want a promotion and I'm going to work hard. So that could be what my motivator is. Now, at the same time, motivation is a highly personal topic. What motivates an employee at the start of their career does not necessarily continue to motivate after 20 years on the job. And I can speak from personal experience on this. When I graduated from the HIT program here in 2004 and I went into my job, well, about, I would say 18 months later, I was begging our director, please let me have this supervision job over transcription. Please let me have it. Our manager had just left, and I was that young 21-year-old kid who just was chomping at the bit for more responsibility. I wanted that promotion. I wanted that salary increase. And she had the forethought to say, they are going to eat you alive. That's not the place for you to start. And so about 3 months later, she gave me my first supervision job. And it went downhill from there. So, again, what motivates you when you're first starting out in your career may not motivate you 15 years later. And so when I was at the top, at the peak of my career at the hospital, basically co-managing the department or co-directing the department, that just didn't drive me anymore. I had been there and done that, and it's almost like burnout, but it's not. But I have a family now, and I have young children, and I want to go and watch them practice their sports through the week, and I want to watch them play their games, and I don't want to be on call from 3 to 11 every Saturday and Sunday, and I don't want to do this when everybody else in my family gets to go have a family birthday party. So again, motivation is highly personal. Each person's motivation is different. All right, so let's move over to 58 and let's get into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, I'm sure this has probably been covered in every psychology class that's ever been taught on the face of the earth, but we're talking about Abraham Maslow's theory. It puts forth the idea that individuals are motivated based on a hierarchy of needs. And so we have his hierarchy here in our slides and on page 58. So the first basic level of needs are the physiological needs. We need food, we need water, we need shelter. So basically when we have those are met, then we move on to the next level. Then we need safety and security. So I've got my food, water, and shelter. Well, now I want good health, and I need a job, and I need a family. And so once we've met that level, we move on to love and belonging. That's friendship and a sense of connection. And then once we have that in place, we move to the fourth level, which is your self-esteem. This is where we feel that personal achievement, where we need recognition and we're respected by others. And then finally, the final and highest level is self-actualization. The needs at this level center on creativity and personal fulfillment. Now we're moving on to Hertzberg. He has a two-factor theory. His two-factor theory is a set of motivators or hygiene factors. Now, our motivators are called job satisfiers, and our hygiene factors are job dissatisfiers. And so you see we're down there on that little seesaw, and we can go back and forth between being dissatisfied with our job or satisfied with our job. Now, let's look at some of these, and you may not think that these things are true, and maybe at some point in your career they may not necessarily be this way, but overall, for I'd say the course of my career, these are pretty much spot on. So let's look at our hygiene factors or our job dissatisfiers. Company policies. I cannot tell you how many employees absolutely hated my guts over the attendance policy change a few years ago at North Mississippi Medical Center. And I was just the messenger. I didn't create those policies. I didn't create that new attendance policy, but you would have thought I was Satan himself coming to deliver that message. So company policies can be true dissatisfiers for people. Then your relationship with your supervisor. If you hate your supervisor or you feel like your supervisor hates you, that is a huge, huge dissatisfier. A lot of people leave their job because of their supervisor. Okay, then you have your relationship with peers. If you cannot get along with someone you're working with and someone that you work with closely, life is not fun. Then your working conditions. If you have to work overtime every Saturday for 2 years, you're not happy. Or you have to work overtime every single week. Now, salary and benefits. You would think those would be job satisfiers, but they're not. They're not motivators, but they indicate whether an employee is happy or unhappy and can act as demotivators. So you may be completely dissatisfied with your salary, or you may be dissatisfied with your benefits. Insurance changed a few years ago at North Mississippi Medical Center, and retirement changed a few years ago, and that was a true dissatisfier among a lot of people. Now, let's talk about the motivators, or the things that are job satisfiers. So the first one, achievement. Nobody can take your achievements away from you. Or being recognized for doing a good job. One of the things that's pretty awesome about North Mississippi is they have an employee of the month. And it could be an employee from environmental services, it can be an employee from a nursing unit, it could be an employee from HIM. But when you get recognized and your picture goes out in the hallway, that's special. That makes you want to go to work and do even better than you were doing, because you've been recognized for what you've done. The work itself. Most people don't get a job just to get a job. They want to do something that they're happy with, something that they're satisfied with. Then you have responsibility. If I give you zero responsibility in your job, it makes you feel like you can't be trusted. So when you're given responsibility, you are satisfied that people recognize who you are and that you can handle things. Career advancement. Okay, so salary might be a part of this, but if I get a 50-cent an hour salary increase, but I still have to work overtime for every Saturday for the next 2 years, I'm not happy. Salary didn't make me happy. But if I am in career advancement, I get to put that on my resume and people look at me with respect, then I'm happy. And then job growth or advancement. Nobody wants to stay stuck in a rut for 15, 20, 25 years. They want the opportunity to grow and advance in their profession. So that is a job motivator and a job satisfier. All right, our next thing is some more motivation theories, getting into goal setting theory. So Edwin Locke, he is an organizational psychologist, and in the 1960s, he led to the creation of the goal setting theory. Now, the goal setting theory is based on the premise that employees respond best when goals are clearly defined and feedback is provided about goal progress. The positive impact of goal setting theory on an employee motivation is found in the employee's commitment to the goals that have been set. So the goals have to be challenging, but they've got to be attainable. Goals must also be specific rather than vague. So if I set a goal for you to code as accurately as possible, you're not going to be as happy with that goal as, okay, well, I want you to have an 80% accuracy rate. It's specific and attainable, but it's not really challenging. So a goal of 100% accuracy, that's challenging and specific, but it may not be attainable. So I may drop that down to 95%. Now we have reinforcement theory. Who's heard of positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement? Now, Frederick Skinner, or Burris B.F. Skinner, he was a psychologist interested in the effect of positive and negative reinforcement on human behavior. His research in the late 30s was on effects of reinforcement that led to the development of the reinforcement theory. The reinforcement theory of motivation is built on the incentive and reward concept. It says reinforcement theory also introduces the concept of operant conditioning. In operant conditioning, behavior is associated with a positive or negative reward and is modified or learned over time. Our example, when an employee exhibits a desired behavior and positive reinforcement is given, then over time that employee is more likely to repeat the desired behavior. Now, the opposite of that is if there is negative reinforcement, then they will not repeat the behavior. All right, and then we have equity theory. J. Stacy Adams was a behavioral psychologist interested in the impact of fair treatment on the employees on workplace motivation. His research was done in the mid-60s, and the equity theory of motivation suggests that employees are motivated by the balance of their inputs in relation to their outputs as compared to both their employer and other workers. So, in other words, an employee is motivated to do well when they believe they contribute to a job in the way of effort, skills, loyalty, trust, those are all inputs, and is equally matched by what they receive from a job in way of salary, benefits, recognition, and job security. So basically they want equity or equality between what they put into it and what they get out of it. They're not going to go out and give 120% for minimum wage. They may go 120% for $30 an hour. Okay? All right, so let's talk about motivation strategies. Now, knowledge of motivational theories is applied in the workplace by managers when they develop strategies and techniques to influence employee behavior. One motivational theory cannot be applied across the board in any department. A manager must know which theory to apply, to whom to apply it, and in what situations the theory will work best. Now, there's 10 factors affecting employee motivation. They're listed on page 61. We have interest in work, good wages, full appreciation for the work that they do. They have job security, there's good working conditions, there's promotion and growth within the organization. There's a feeling of being in on things, that they're a part of the group. There's personal loyalty to the employees. There's tactful discipline. They're not being embarrassed when they've messed up. And there's sympathetic help with personal problems. Now, dropping down into that next paragraph, let's talk about motivational strategies that center on actual jobs and job descriptions. Now, job design changes are used to motivate employees by making their jobs more interesting and increasing an individual's usefulness throughout the organization. Now, job enlargement. This is a horizontal expansion of job duties. Okay, so think about this as I get new tasks added to my current job, but I still have the same autonomy and the same level of responsibility. So if I can do A, B, and C without anybody else having to help me make decisions, that's not going to change. The autonomy is still there for me to do the same things I was doing before. I just have a few more responsibilities. So an example might be if you're an inpatient coder and they need you to do a little bit of outpatient coding. Well, you don't have to learn any new skills. Coding is still coding, but you might have to have a little bit of training in CPT, but you've already got the coding skills. So this is job enlargement. Again, a horizontal expansion of duties. Now, job enrichment is a vertical expansion of duties, okay? This means that you have to acquire a new skill. You can't do this new piece of this job with the current skill set that you have. So you have to learn something new and you're moving up. Let's just say it that way. You're moving up. You're not spreading out like job enlargement. You're getting a few new tasks in job enlargement that kind of expand your job. And you're spreading out. You're covering more territory. In vertical expansion and job enrichment, you do have to learn something new. And our example here is a clinical documentation specialist that is being asked to prepare and present documentation tips and query examples to physicians at monthly medical and surgical department meetings. Well, these clinical documentation specialists, they may need to go to a PowerPoint course, or they may need some verbal communication help, and they may have to learn those skills. If they're a super nice, quiet introvert that doesn't like to get out of their comfort zone and speak to anybody, but if they're asked to go and present these to these physicians at these meetings, then those are new skills that these people have to obtain. So they're actually moving up in their level. Now we have job rotation. Now, job rotation requires employees to rotate again among different jobs. So you're moving from one place to another. Maybe one week you work at the release of information desk, and then the next week I'm going to go analyze charts for deficiencies, or one week I'm going to go and be a scan tech. So I'm keeping things fresh because I get to do different things each week. But again, I'm usually at the same level. I'm still doing a clerical job. I'm not moving from release of information one week and going and being an inpatient coder the next week. Those aren't the same level of jobs. So you're staying at the same level, rotating through different tasks. All right, let's see. What do we got next? All right, almost finishing up. So our last slide is talking about morale. Now you can drop to the bottom of 61 and look at motivating teams. What motivates an individual to improve performance is different than what motivates a team. Teams must work together to achieve common rather than individual goals. In fact, individual goals may conflict with your group goals. Now, flipping over, let's talk about before we drop into morale, look at the aging workforce motivation. I like this paragraph. What motivates the younger worker may not motivate the older worker. For example, early in a career, the possibility of a promotion and more money may motivate an individual to high performance. Again, that was me at a young buck 20-year-old thinking, oh man, I just got my 2-year degree at ICC. I've got my RHIT. And I want a promotion. I want to move up. And that's where I was. Had I started that job when I was 35, I might not have wanted that. I might have wanted the steady work and I'm not going to say the lack of responsibility, but not having someone else report to me. Being there, doing my job, getting my work done, and getting to go home every day. That may have motivated me more now at 35 than it did when I was 20. All right, last thing we're going to talk about is morale. And then again, these slides, we're just going to have to work together on these slides, how they just kind of don't give a lot of detail and they skip a lot of things. But anyway, let's move into morale. Morale is the mental and emotional condition of an individual or group with regard to the function or task at hand. So there is a positive relationship between morale and productivity, although the effects diminish as morale increases. Increasingly low morale to a moderate or high level can increase productivity. However, employees that already exhibit high levels of morale probably cannot increase their productivity measurably. Many elements affect the employee's enthusiasm for their job. As the degree of autonomy present in a job increases, so does morale. So, workplace autonomy, what does that mean? Well, basically means, again, you have some decision-making ability on your own. You don't have to go out and ask your boss every little time you need to make a decision. You have the ability to kind of make your own course. I'll use it here as an example. When I came to ICC, I have great autonomy here. No one tells me what to teach in my courses. Now, I have a roadmap to follow from KHIM because we're an accredited program of KHIM, and they suggest things, but I choose which assignments you do. I can create my own assignments if I want to. I can give you an open book test if I want to. I can close class down for the day if I want to. That's the workplace autonomy I have here at ICC. All right. Now, next paragraph, workplace safety. This is another component affecting morale. Healthcare organizations implement safety programs for all of their employees. Universal precautions protect against transmission of disease. Education on the body mechanics prevents injury of the back. And lifestyle programs support smoking cessation, healthy eating, and weight loss. The degree to which employees are encouraged to participate in safety programs can be perceived as a measure of how an organization values its workforce. And then last one, morale boosting efforts should focus on creating a positive atmosphere in the workplace. Managers can show genuine appreciation for their employees in many ways. Department social gatherings such as picnics and recognition dinners held off-site can boost morale. So really think about morale as being enthusiastic about your job, or being confident in your job, or having that loyalty to your employer. That's just the feeling of you're just happy to be there, and everybody around you is happy to be there. I can promise you, when morale is gone, it's like going to a dungeon every day. You don't want to be at work. You pull into the parking garage and it's just like, please, can I go home? Why did I not wake up sick this morning? So morale is a very, very important thing when it comes to your departments and who you work with. So anybody has any questions about this chapter, you can email me, or anything like that. We can talk about this in person. But again, read through the chapter. We didn't cover, every word. I'm going to leave that to you to read your chapter, and you can follow along with that PowerPoint. Good luck, happy reading, happy studying.